Talk the walk with every sip and laugh. Coffee's the fuel, martini's the craft. Conversations swirling in the cool night air. Talk the walk, we're going somewhere.
Good morning, Alan.
Good evening, Leanne.
Welcome back to another episode of Talk the Walk at number 17. Can you believe it?
Yeah, so we have a record crowd today. We're getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And I think it's because the topic is so juicy. Now, Alan, before we jump in, I'm always keen to know how your week was. And I know you celebrated your birthday earlier this week. How was that?
Yes, well, my birthday was great. My wife took me out for a great steak and a great bottle of wine. And I got, because I put it in Monday Morning Memo, I got hundreds of, best wishes from all over the world, which was very gratifying. So it's nice. There's a difference between age and aging. So my age is higher, but I'm not aging. Look at me. I'm full of life.
You're 79. I can't believe it.
I can. I mean, the thing is, in all seriousness, the thing about age is perspective. And so people are screaming right now, this is not a political statement. Oh, it's a crisis, Trump is here, or it's a crisis, eggs are so high, or it's a crisis this. I lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was a crisis because both Khrushchev and the Kennedys were close to the red button. Khrushchev was crazy, and the Kennedys were way over their heads. And we had a lot of luck not to be annihilated then. So I know what a crisis is, and it's not because somebody's in the White House.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of aging, is that you get that perspective.
Exactly.
Well, and if you're joining us, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to jump into the topic really soon, but I responded to your email wishing you a happy birthday, but your email was so good on Monday. It was just sharing like everything you've done, like the journey you've been on. Can you just quickly maybe highlight one or two key points from that? Because I think it was one of your best Monday memos.
I said I'm the epitome of the American dream, and that is, we had no money. My parents used to argue over how to pay $45 rent for our apartment. But I determined when I was in school, I was there to read every word on every page in every book. And I got myself an education. And when you have an education, there's a hell of a lot you can do as opposed to not having an education. And, there were a lot of setbacks and there were a lot of bumps in the road and a lot of bullies, but you see your way through them. And if you can't learn from defeat, then you're in bad trouble. So I learned from everything I do, just like as a consultant, you don't get a proposal accepted, you learn from it. So for those of you here today, a Monday Morning Memo is completely free. It comes out, guess what, every Monday morning. I've been doing it for 10 years or more, and you can sign up on my site.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. And if you are here joining us live, let us know where you're dialing in from, where you're jumping in from, and any questions and comments. We love hearing from you and responding to you as well. Now, I'm in Brisbane, Australia. Right now, we are on cyclone watch.
Oh,
cyclone. Yeah. So, yeah, sorry. I didn't actually even tell you that beforehand. I wanted your reaction in real time. We have a Category 2 system building up off the coast. It's been building up for days. I've heard this morning it's actually slowed down now and is intensifying even more. So our coast, we're basically everything's shut down today. Schools are shut. But if you look outside the window, it's quite pleasant. It's the calm before the storm.
is a cyclone our equivalent of a hurricane?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah. And so I had to reschedule my luxury camp out, which is happening on Monday. That's had to move over to June. I've got a question for you, and I might just throw this and if you want to take it, but is there an analogy with this cyclone building up off the coast? It's going slower, it's intensifying, and then it's going to hit the coast. Is there something that we can weave into a leadership content lesson around that, linking that metaphor in?
Sure. When you see something building up, just because it's not upon you doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing anything. Sitting around hoping that it goes away and saying it's in God's hands isn't helpful. And so when you see, for example, your competition developing a certain kind of technology, or you see government regulation turning in a certain direction, don't sit around hoping it doesn't affect you. Make plans, make contingency plans about it. The Israelis saw a lot of strange movements across from their settlement, and they didn't investigate much, and that resulted in that October massacre. So Marshall McLuhan, the Canadian said, the price of eternal vigilance is indifference. So you have to vary your routines. You have to look at things in different ways and ask yourself, okay, well, let's hope it doesn't happen. We hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Yeah, that's the catch cry. That's what we've been hearing, and be prepared, not scared. So really well done there. That was such a great example. I didn't ask you to pre-bake that. I just threw that to you.
No rehearsals here. Hello, Sarah.
Everything is lives. G'day,
Yeah.
Sarah. Sarah's joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. I met Sarah in Vegas end of last year. Dee Dee, freezing, rainy California. Great to have you here, Dee Dee. Jennifer is joining us from Ontario, Canada. Lovely to have you here. Dragika from Windsor, Ontario. Oh, wow. Ontario is representing today. And we have California as well. Great to have you here, Natalie. Continue to let us know what questions and comments that you have. So today we're jumping in.
Oh, I thought we were out of time.
I know, getting so excited around life. But look, I think what you just demonstrated there was a really great example around using a metaphor to explain a concept. And today we're talking about how to craft a killer keynote speech. Now, Alan, you are in the Hall of Fame for the National Speakers Association. I'm sure you got a lot on this topic. I'm just curious to find out, first of all, what is the role of a keynote speaker?
Okay. I demanded a recount, by the way, but they still let me into the Hall of Fame. I don't know how that happened. First of all, let's define a keynote. A keynote is the opening general session. If somebody says, I'm doing the closing keynote, that's an oxymoron. A keynote sounds the key note for the rest of the convention. So you might be doing a plenary session, which is everyone, as opposed to a concurrent session, but the keynote starts it off. The role of a keynote speaker, therefore, is to set the stage. Here is what you're going to be experiencing, and they add their own intellectual capital to it. So that's what a keynote is. They're generally between 45 and 90 minutes. If you're doing more than 90 minutes, you're doing a workshop or a seminar or something.
Yeah.
If you're doing less than 45 minutes, you're probably doing, some kind of introduction or brief address. That's basically what a keynote is. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's setting the stage, setting the theme, and setting the context for what's about to come.
That's right.
Yeah.
Keynote speeches have a certain formula to them. There are three kinds of speakers. There is a speaker-centered speaker, and that means this is the speaker who wants to tell his or her favorite joke or favorite story, and they're up there getting their pleasure, and I often think they should have a big mirror so they can just look at themselves. Then there's the audience-centered speaker. The audience-centered speaker wants a standing ovation, wants all 10s on the smile sheets, and wants that kind of feedback because they need love and they don't have a dog. Now, the most important kind of speaker is the buyer-centered speaker. And I said this in some of our promo on LinkedIn. You have to be oriented to what the buyer's needs are. So you have to ask your buyer, what do you want to see happen as a result of the keynote? And if the buyer might say something ridiculous, I want to see everybody change their attitude about this and change these skills. Well, you can't do that in an hour. You could do that in coaching or consulting. But if the buyer says to you, that was exactly what I wanted, you're going to get more business from that buyer and from referrals. So be a buyer-centered speaker in your keynote.
So BAS, those are the three: the buyer, the audience, and the speaker-centric speaker. Let us know in chat, which one are you? Are you a buyer? I don't think anyone's going to admit to being a speaker one. I'd probably admit to being an audience one, to be honest. I'm there to delight the people in that crowd. That's just the way I am. And so I probably need some rewiring here. Got a question for you on the buyer-centric speaker. When you're talking to the buyer and they're like, we want everyone to change their opinion about this, do you actually tell them that's impossible to do in 45 minutes, or do you take that challenge on?
Yes, I tell them it's impossible because I want to work again. And so some people tell me, listen, we're going to be doing a series of layoffs, and we want you to speak to these people and keep their morale up. I'm going to say, well, if I could do that, I'd charge you $3 million, but I wouldn't do that because I can't do that. So why don't we talk about the fact that you don't have a series of rolling layoffs? If you want to lay people off, you do it in one gulp. Then you tell them it's over and you explain how that happens. Maybe instead of speaking, I should be advising you on this. So there are times when people want something ridiculous. And if you accept this to get the money, you're not going to work there again, or maybe any place else that buyer knows. So it's important to keep this in this kind of context. When you read, you become aware. So I write books and I make people aware. When you speak, whether it's a keynote or a workshop or something, you can transfer skills. But if you want the skills applied on the job, you have to coach and consult.
Yes.
So, nobody ever learned to ski by reading a book or by sitting in a classroom. You learn to ski by going up to the top of the mountain with an instructor and watching how you bend your knees and keep the upside blade of the ski, against the snow and so forth.
Yeah. So setting that right expectation as well. So in a second, I'm going to ask you around what the foundations are of a killer keynote, but I just wanted to acknowledge a couple more people. So Leon, welcome, pre-cyclone Gold Coast. Yeah, Gold Coast is getting a lot of attention with this cyclone in terms of the modeling. Natalie admits as well that she is an audience speaker. So we might even talk about how do we move from being audience-centric to bias-centric. Maybe it has something to do with a bit of self-worth. I mean, I have 2 dogs already, so I'm not lacking there. What forms the foundation of a good keynote?
Well, I'll tell you what my rule is, and you can take it from there and decide. 60% of my keynotes are the same. There's a shockaroo. 60% are the same because I always talk about agency or empowerment. I talk about innovation. I talk about environments for growth and so forth and so on. And I always deliver those because they're processes anyone can use. So that's about 60%. 30% is directed at that particular audience. And so if it's a pharmaceutical audience, I think about pharmaceutical examples. If it's a hospitality, I think about that. And then 10% is ad lib. And I tend to walk around without a name tag when I get there. And I hear things because people assume I work for the company. They just don't know me. And so I'll build on that. I gave a keynote for Toyota in Arizona, and it was maybe 150 degrees, and the air conditioner wasn't working well, and people were bitching and moaning about why they were in Arizona in August, right? And so I'm introduced. I said, listen, before I start, let me tell you that I know why you're here in this kind of heat. And so the place is absolutely quiet. I said the surface of the sun was booked, and after that, that's the ad lib part.
See, that's really a lot of, I guess, keynote speakers are really quite orchestrated and regimented, and like they'll go out and they'll block the stage and be like, I've got to stand just to the left of the microphone to have the impact that I'm after, and my body language has to be this, and my first line out of my mouth is that. But you don't do that.
No, and those people are the ones who talk about authenticity, so they're hypocrites. No, I only work with notes with bullet points because I don't believe you memorize a speech, and my memory isn't that good anyway. But I never read a speech. I just give a speech. I've been on stage left sometimes, and I'll say to people, something, I forgot my next point. Talk among yourselves. I'm walking back to the podium. And everybody loves that stuff. And so that's what I do. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And when you do tell stories, because I believe in stories,
Yeah.
the stories have to evoke real emotion and then a learning point. So may I demonstrate one?
Please.
All right. So I land in LA. I'm giving a speech. And I'm picked up at the airport by this woman who I happen to know who works for this LA organization. And we get in her car, and in the back seat, she's got first aid kits and bottled water and all this stuff. I said to her, do you expect to be marooned somewhere? And she says, no. This is an emergency, So we're traveling along, and there's a right lane, a center lane, and a left lane. And this is LA. So the center lane is creeping along at around 35 miles an hour. This is a highway. I look to my left, and the cars are buzzing past us. And I said to her, why don't you pull to the left? And she said, I can't. It's the high occupancy vehicle lane. I said, how many people do you need for high occupancy? She said, 2. I said, which of us isn't here? And then I say to the audience, how many times are you so invested in something that you don't realize the circumstances have changed? Opportunity is waiting for you. See?
That is really great. Yeah, I love that. You're right. We just are so fixated on what is that we don't actually accept what's in front of us or where we are. So that's an example of you telling a story. It only took, a minute, and then it really hammered home a point because we're in the car with you.
That's right.
I was thinking of that car though. That's probably what I need right now for this cyclone prep, and I haven't done that. But in terms of your foundation, you talk about the 60% it's kind of like modularized. You'll take it and so have you really spent time over the years like harnessing that 60% so it's like robust, bulletproof, it's going to land every time?
Oh yeah. Once I have a story or any kind of metaphor or anything and it works, I never change the cadence. I'll only change it if it goes out of date, but otherwise, if I say, well, I was flying on this propellered plane, but I never change the cadence because I know it works, and I know that I'm good at it, and I know it's natural. So all my stories are personalized that way. Every story I tell is true. I don't make up a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, let me just give everybody a hint here about something.
Yeah.
When I was in, somebody in the Hall of Fame with me, with Jeannie Robertson, and who passed away a year or two ago, a magnificent speaker and a wonderful comic, very funny woman. And she taught me to keep a story log. And she did it because she often spoke for the same companies, and she didn't want to repeat herself. And so the story log that I keep is on a simple piece of software called FileMaker. You can do it on a spreadsheet. And let's just say the story I just told, I would simply have HOV as my trigger. I wouldn't write out the story, just as HOV. And under it, I have three things. So I would have, I'd have automobiles, Los Angeles, and stuck in a perception. And so if I were in LA, I would hit the file and I would say LA stories, and this would be one that would come up.
Nice.
That's the story log.
Yeah, yeah, great. Thank you. And I know stories really underpin everything that you do. Like even I've been in your multi-day workshops, and you just bring out story after story over time, and it makes it really memorable. Jadika's asked, what did Alan say were the 3 staples of the 60%? So these are your like innovation.
Yeah, I think what I said was that these are the things I talk about, and I tend to talk about innovation and agency or empowerment, and I talk about the environment for growth and things like that.
Yeah.
You can talk about whatever you want. Those aren't for everyone. But I think that it saves you a lot of trouble, a lot of time, if the foundation of your IP and your help to companies is confined to certain things that you know you're going to talk about every time.
Yeah. So if you think you've got your area of expertise, it's really honing in on what's the 60% that I can then apply to variations of that speech, no matter what it is. So you said you can apply it to innovation, you can apply it to safety leadership, you could apply it to managing risk, same thing.
Yeah. Now let me ask you, have you done keynotes? Are you big on keynotes? And how did you gravitate toward them? And what did you learn when you were doing that?
I like them because maybe I like the performance element of them. I'm trying to actually model myself off what you do in terms of like using stories to really demonstrate points. I gravitated towards them. I think it's more of a challenge, actually. Like I actually think workshops are easier because you can get contribution from a group, whereas a keynote is a monologue. It is you want to get a reaction from the audience, and well, in my perspective, in terms of trying to get that energy. So for me, I've really had to work on storytelling, humor. I was going to ask you a bit about humor, like kind of over engineering it versus being real and in the moment sometimes. But I really enjoy it. I think sometimes where I've struggled is I want to bring in some interaction, because I just don't like having people sit there passively for 45 minutes. It feels wrong to me. What do you tell me about that?
Well, I'll tell you 3 things. The first is this. There's nothing wrong with giving the audience a quick exercise. Take 2 minutes and tell me, what have you encountered in terms of alleviating stress? Take 2 minutes. Talk to your neighbor. Okay, so that's one thing. A second thing is you can take Q&A whenever you like, just because it's a keynote. I mean, you say, look, any questions? And so that creates the interaction. The third thing is a do not, and that is in keynotes, do not use visuals. They take the focus off of you, and suddenly there's technology, and don't use that. Don't use automatic polling. Don't use all this kind of stuff. Focus on your rapport with the audience, and that's how you will be successful. In a longer show, as you were saying, in a workshop or something, use anything you want. But for a keynote, keep the focus on you and your expertise, because again, you want to please a buyer.
Okay, yeah, so no slides at all. You wouldn't even use your flip chart. You just are up there.
Yeah, and sometimes sometimes I'll portray something. For example, I have a famous story where I walk 35 feet away from the customs guy, the immigration guy, and I actually walk across the stage, and then I look back as though the other guy's still there. So you can do that. Yeah. Hey, Drajika, I've got to tell you, it's 60% standard, 30% oriented toward the client, and 10% ad lib. But maybe this is yours, and I respect that. But I just want to clarify that's
perfect.
30% is targeting the audience, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Cool. Thanks, Alan. That was really interesting about the visuals, because a lot of keynote speakers, as in my peers, spend a lot of time like finding the perfect visual and video. Okay. So that's cool. I'm going to think about that. Sarah's got a question. Sarah asked, what are some techniques to hook them in the opening? We've spoken about stories, ad-libbing.
I'm glad she asked this, because this is really important. This is going to be the 1% for some of you. In the first 90 seconds of your keynote, people determine how closely to listen to you. They don't determine whether to listen to you. They're not going to leave, but they are saying, maybe I can check my email. I can talk to Ralph over here. And so the first 90 seconds, and for that matter, by digression, in a book or in a recording, the first 90 seconds, equally important, even in a meeting. So here's what I mean. Don't open a speech by saying, thank you very much. It's so good to be here. You know, how you doing? Don't do that. Start immediately with maybe 2 seconds of silence. Let people settle, and they're staring at you. And then you say something like, I was fishing and I got caught by the fish. Now you're going to have everybody's attention, and you tell your story, and then you make your transition and you have them. But that first 90 seconds is when they'll decide how closely to listen.
That's a cool opening line. You've really got to really craft that, right? Like that has to be like a bang on line. The other thing, I'm just curious, you talk about the 90 seconds and what you say, but are they also judging like how you're walking onto stage, what you're wearing, who, like what you look like? I'm sure that factors in.
No, that's what people want you to believe. Speaking experts, coaches want you to believe, you know, you dress for success, so you don't do this, you don't do that. I would say this. What they're going to most be impressed by is the value you provide for them that enables them to pragmatically improve what they do. That's the value. Now, there are some things you want to observe here. For example, you know, there's a big discussion about whether Zelensky should have worn a suit to the meeting in the Oval Office or not. But I will tell you this. I mean, I was coaching a woman. She sent me a video of her speaking, and she walked out there in a very casual outfit with glasses on top of her head. A lot of people push their glasses up, and you could see the reflection of the lights through her glasses. This is not respectful. You know, you have to practice what you're going to wear and think about it so that the audience can relate to you. So, you know, you have to be choreographed so that you can walk around the stage and not stay behind a podium. And you have to use hand gestures. And by the way, the larger the audience, the more exaggerated they should be. But that's pretty easy to master. What's the language is everything. I coached a world-known cosmetic surgeon. He was speaking all over the world. He had advanced techniques for plastic surgery and so on. And I said, okay, let's practice. It's going to be part of your speech. And he said, this is a dramatic new example, and it's very novel in how you create this kind of skin tuck or something like that. And I said, try it this way. What would you think is the best way to create a skin tuck like this? What do you think? How many think it's this? How many think it's that? Right? It's an interaction.
Yes.
And then I had him say, you'll be surprised. It's a question of doing something completely counterintuitive, and it will raise your fees by twice as much. Here's what it is.
Nice.
His wife told me that when he started doing that globally, people went crazy.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, that's immediately like it's more engaging. So in terms of like you mentioned that you just bullet point, like you have speaking notes, you don't actually script it.
No.
So if you're working with someone, like let's just say I want you to review one of my speeches. What do I do? Do I send you that bullet point sheet and then you like recraft some opening things? Like what would you do?
That's too difficult because our delivery is so important. It's steak and it's sizzle, right? So
Yeah,
I'd
right.
rather see a video of what you're doing. And the video can be, you can practice it just by yourself, but if you can do it in front of a group, even better. And that way I can see the whole gestalt here and I know what to tell you.
Yeah, awesome. I've got one. I'm just wondering if I'm brave enough to send it to you. Okay. Hey, I'm creating a service, Alan. I thought I don't know. I'm going to send it to my email list. This is the first time I'm sharing this publicly. I'm going to call it Roasted by Leanne. So people submit stuff to me. It could be their website, something else, maybe their speaker video, and I'm going to roast it in a nice sort of video feedback thing for them to provide, feedback and actionable items.
So I do sessions occasionally called Being Irritated by Alan, and it's $2,500, and I give you about 40 minutes of feedback with a group. So it's embarrassing, but and so I go one after another, and I think there's a lot of utility in that, but you have to be dealing with people with pretty strong egos.
That's right. Well, I think if you call it Roasted by Leanne, that's what they're gonna, in a loving way, loving and empathetic way. What separates a forgettable keynote from a killer one? You've shared a few things in terms of how you even start. What are you wearing? Don't have glasses on your head. Anything else? Because none of us want to be forgettable.
Well, you start with this hook, right? You have the hook. And then you go from point to point. I mean, basically what you're doing is it's a point, story, social proof, a point, story, social proof. You go through your 4 points. People are immersed in all 4 of them. And then you end with a call to action, dramatic call to action. And you say, let me tell you can do this tomorrow. You have to do these 3 things. It's not hard. Just do these 3 things. Open your calendar, write it in, and ask someone to hold you accountable, whatever it is. And then end with a story. I always end with a story, like a signature story. And by doing that, it actually cements the prior point in with people.
Nice. When you speak about point, story, social proof, do you mean like, is that the order that you do it in? Because it seems like you start with a story, you land your point, and then you'll emphasize it with a social. Does it matter the order, or am I just being way too analytical?
Well, it doesn't matter that much. I don't think you're being too analytical. I do think you have to do what's comfortable for you. Give me a subject.
Turtles.
Did you say turtles? Like the reptile?
Yeah.
I'll tell you a brief story about turtles. I was scuba diving at the Great Barrier Reef. And the instructor told me, if we're lucky, we'll see a green sea turtle. I said, well, great. And we went down, and about 30 minutes later, there was a green sea turtle. And I decided I would follow it, and I would touch its flipper. And before I knew it, my foot was being pulled backwards. And it was the instructor pointing to our oxygen amount and going like this. And he said, what the hell were you thinking? And I said, I was almost with him. He said, with him, you could never catch a green turtle, and you were running out of oxygen. What the hell's wrong with you? Get on the beach. And so you can't let a momentary fixation overcome your common sense and the technology that's telling you you're in trouble. Now,
nice.
we didn't rehearse that.
No. And I was like, hey, turtle, he's not gonna have a turtle story. Well, you got to do, this is the thing. I mean, this probably leads into what we were talking about at the beginning in terms of you living this, a really great life, an interesting life, is that that is fuel for stories. Like if you hadn't been at the Great Barrier Reef, traveling to, across the world, where would you have pulled that from? So,
well, I've scuba dived all over too. So, I mean, if we were in the Cayman Islands right now, I'd say I was in the Caymans, right? Okay.
Yeah, nice. Got a couple of comments I'm going to read in a sec, but I'm just curious. We spoke about developing the speech, then match fitness in terms of even the day. Do you feel a little bit nervous, like, or maybe when you were, let's say 30 years ago, when you were about my age, did you feel nervous?
Are you trying to end this series we do 30 years ago when you were my age? Is that part of your roasting? What is you?
I'm not roasting you right now. It's a 2 out of 10 roast,
When I very first started speaking, I think I was leading off for Abraham Lincoln. I think he was the main keynote speaker. But when I first started speaking, I was nervous. But after I did it once or twice, just like when I went on the roller coaster the first time, I said, this is pretty cool. And then I got anticipatory. And today I want to get started. I can't wait to work with the audience. Yeah. And I tell introducers, here's my introduction, read it verbatim and get the hell off. And if you don't, because a lot of these people think they're the star, they want to add things, right? I said, you do not read this verbatim, I'm coming out there and taking the microphone away. I'm warning you. Yeah. Some of them say, I didn't bring your introduction with me. And I pull in my pocket, I said, here it is. I have an extra. So I get very anticipatory. I can't wait to work with the audience.
Yeah. I'm the same. And I find like if I'm on, and this isn't a keynote, but if I'm on during a conference or speaking anytime where it's the afternoon, I'm just waiting around. I can't do anything else. Like I'm just waiting to speak. Whereas you'd probably be writing a book that morning.
Yeah. Playing Angry Birds, right? Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell you,
and in terms of, sorry, in terms of rehearsing, like, do you like out loud rehearse in front of a mirror? What does that look like for you?
No. Sometimes I time it because there's a tight time frame and I never go over. I would rather end 10 minutes early than go 2 minutes over.
Yeah.
I will tell you though, while we have a little bit of time, my greatest speaking success ever, single speech, was in Sydney. Mm-hmm. And I had been on a speaking tour of Australia and we ended in Sydney. My wife was with me and we were at this big hall. It was probably, 300 or 400 people. And at the end, I don't know why I did it, but at the end, this is an ad lib piece. I said, I just love Australians and I'm not blowing smoke. I said, maybe it's because my father was a paratrooper who fought in New Guinea to defend Australia. And I guess I have an affinity for the place, and he did too, you know? I talked about that. And Australians, at least at the time, did not give standing ovations. And these people stood and clapped and clapped and clapped. So I thanked them, and I walked off stage, and they kept clapping. I came back on stage, and they kept clapping. I did that 3 times, and the 4th time I said to my wife, we're leaving the building.
Oh,
And it was
yeah.
one of the very special moments in my entire career.
Yeah. And that's really special. And as you share that, like, I'm getting chills as well. And I imagine that was even more special as well for the people in the room. That's memorable, right? Because
Yeah.
it has that emotion. There's real emotion, a real emotional connection to it.
Yeah. I've been to Australia 19 times. I don't think that's an accident.
No. Oh, well, we'll love to get you back. Number 20. Dee Dee, I think she asked this before, and you shared the turtle story, and she also shared this guy, the perfect story every time. That's probably a service you could offer, the perfect story every time. Ken says, yes, does it come with age? So he was talking about like this reduction of nerves as well. Finally, I just want to ask, are there any tips for working with tough crowds? Like where maybe you're not the keynote, maybe you're sort of later in the conference, but or maybe the CEO's done a speech and it hasn't been the most invigorating thing, and then you're next.
Well, stick to your guns. In other words, start with something that's going to grab their interest right away and do a great job. Don't be diminished. Don't be deterred by something that happened before. But if you're talking a tough crowd in terms of hostile questions, not just questions, which are good, but hostile questions, or things like that, and sometimes you have to deal with it directly. In my entire career, I've drawn my guns on stage 3 times. Once, by the way, was in Australia, and because you have all the power on stage, and if you pick on someone, it's not terribly nice. But
Yeah.
I saw one group. It's just what you said. They had a lousy speaker before me, one of the executives. They've all got their iPhones out. And I said to them when I was introduced, okay, listen, here's a test. I said, you can put your iPhones away and listen to me for the next 59 minutes because you'll still have your iPhones. But if you want to keep fooling around with them, when I'm done in 59 minutes, you won't have me again. Think it over.
Wow. So you actually said that to kick it off.
What do I have to lose?
I'm
paid.
It's pretty brave to say that, you know?
No. Bravery is the people jumping into enemy guns.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Oh, lots of so much here. Any sort of final thoughts or notes of advice for us that are aspiring keynote speakers, want to continue doing it?
Have fun.
Great.
Have fun. Enjoy it. If you enjoy it, the audience will enjoy it. Emotions are infectious. If you seem nervous, they'll be nervous. And so stop worrying about what you're wearing. Stop worrying about whether they like you. Just go out there and try to help them by giving them value, but enjoy doing it. Laughter reduces tension and reduces stress.
Yeah.
And it releases endorphins. And so that's what you should try to do.
Yeah, love it. Hey, and there's been 2 more questions that have snuck in. Are you okay if we just go for a minute or 2 longer?
I'm good.
Sweet. Jennifer asks, when an event planner requests the keynote has not been presented before, can you be authentic with that by using different examples, but keeping the same framework or key elements? So they want like a unique keynote.
They don't want a unique keynote. Is that what you're saying?
They do want a unique keynote. So they want something that's never been delivered before.
Well, I think that's fair, but don't forget, it doesn't mean your intellectual property has to change. So what should change are the examples you use and some of the metaphors you use and the stories you use, but you're there for a purpose. And so if you're there to help understand what enlightened leadership is, you don't have to create a new definition of enlightened leadership. But what you do is maybe you adapt it for their purposes. I've called audience members in advance when I was given a list with their permission and said, tell me what the biggest issues you're facing today.
Yeah, love that.
Extremely relevant, right?
Yeah, I did the same thing with my groups. Not call them, but we'll do like sort of a virtual check-in survey thing beforehand. Diana, these tips are great for in person. Do you do events on screen? And if so, what is your advice for a virtual presentation? I
do a 90-minute presentation every month, at least one, because I have a Zoom series. It's on my site. And my advice for a virtual presentation is still, don't use screen sharing unless you absolutely have to present one thing and then get it off. I suggest that you use a gallery view so that you can see as many people as you can, even if they're on different screens. And I suggest that there's nothing wrong with doing the Q&A that I talked about. I wouldn't use, crazy stuff like Zoom's separate rooms and things. You're getting into a workshop then.
Yeah.
But you still have to show a lot of energy because it's 2-dimensional, not 3-dimensional. So you can see what Leanne and I are doing here. There's a lot of energy here, and that's what you have to put across. And I demand that everybody have their video on. You cannot attend my sessions with the video off because it's not respectful. And I want to see your reactions. I'm letting you see mine.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, Alan, you gave a great example earlier of with that surgeon where he asked a question, you got hands raised. Like I will do that in virtual as well. Like, hey, these are their options, 1, 2, or 3. Let me know what you think in chat, and just to try to get that happening too. And I guess even on this, we're doing a virtual live stream now. We're trying to keep it interactive with everyone here as well. So we got some applause. Thanks so much, Cam.
I hope you're standing up.
Oh, yeah. He can say that he is. Sarah, thanks, Alan and Leanne. See you next time. And I think we'll close it there, Alan. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad we got to talk before the cyclone hits, and hopefully it isn't too bad. And hope you have a wonderful birthday week.
Yeah, please stay safe. And listen, everybody listening, if you have ideas for future shows, let us know.
Yes, that's right. And if you want to sponsor my coffee mug in future, you're welcome to do that too. Enjoy that martini. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Good night.